Okay, I get to share something with you that I haven't been able to share yet, and it's interesting. The history of what God has done in my life is really kind of unusual in that I've been able to take classes at the right time, where there was this big world-renowned psychologist was over in Oxford, and he decided to go on sabbatical to write a book. He decided to sabbatical in the United States, in Michigan, and decided after he got done writing his book, he wanted to test out the theory by teaching a class at the college that I was attending, and only taught one class that one time that I took it. Okay, so it's just weird things have happened. God lined things up in very weird ways so that I was able to create and work with St. Mary's Hospital on what's called the Coin St. Mary Stress Test. Okay, now, St. Mary's Hospital in Grand Rapids is like St. Vincent's or St. Francis. Okay, big old hospital thing. But this is the Coin St. Mary's Stress Test, and it has been proven over the past 11 years to be 100% accurate. Okay, so here's how this test works. You guys ready to take the stress test? Okay, here's how this is going to work. I'll give you some instructions, and then we'll take it, and then I'm going to get the results from you guys by a show of hands, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a picture. It's going to be a picture of two dolphins. Now, have you ever seen those pictures where you see two pictures side by side, and it says at the top, spot the difference? Have you seen those? You can like nod or something. Let me know you know what I'm talking about. Okay, good. So you're going to see that between the two dolphins that there might be some differences. The goal is to count how many differences you see. Anywhere from 0 to however many you end up getting. Now, I'm going to eventually ask you what number you got. How many got 3? How many found 7? How many found whatever? Or how many, whatever, or 0, whatever the case is. And based on your number, I'll be able to give you an assessment. Okay, so you guys ready to count? I'll give you about 10 seconds to spot the differences between the two dolphins. So are you ready? Here we go. How many spot at least one difference? There you go. You know what that means? You're stressed. Okay, isn't that a great, lots of money went into this research. But here's the point though. The point is every single one of us are stressed. At some point, you show me somebody who's not stressed, one of two things is going to be the reality. Either one, they haven't hit puberty yet, or two, they got a special jacket in a special padded room. Okay, one of the two is going on. Okay, everybody is stressed. Okay, absolutely everybody is stressed. And that's what we're going to be looking at today, is looking at stress and how we can be living the combat life for the kingdom of God as soldiers in Christ, and we're going to find stress. And then we're going to figure out how to flip the words around and combat the stress, not just be stressed about the combat. Because that's what we're going to be looking at, is how we're going to handle this, how we're going to work at this, and looking at Jesus and what he does. And we're going to notice something very fascinating, and that is going to be that Jesus stressed out. Okay, so how many of you have ever been to the point, not just experiencing stress, you've been stressed out? Some point in your life. Okay, maybe you even thought at that point in your life you were in sin because of how stressed out you were. And then to find out that Jesus stressed out and he didn't sin, that means that stress isn't sin. And being stressed out isn't sinful. So we're going to find something very fascinating about stress today. And we're going to find out that it's not the stress that's the problem, but how we handle it that's the problem. And we're going to have to look at that. So we're going to have this great little adventure, and the whole stress starts off when Jesus has already had the Last Supper, right? They ate, they had popcorn, Krispy Kreme donuts, and Diet Coke, okay? And so Jesus had the Lord's Supper with that. Not quite. But nonetheless, he had this Last Supper with them, and they had their meal, and then they sang their song, and they left. Okay, and now as they're leaving, Jesus gives them a talk on their way to the Garden of Gethsemane. So check this out. Starting at verse 31 of Matthew 26, it says, then, remember, they're walking now. Okay, they're en route. Then Jesus told them, this very night, you will all fall away on account of me. Okay, so he's telling his disciples, how many? All. Everybody focuses on Peter. You're going to betray me 3 times. Everybody focuses on that. They miss this word. All. Okay, all of you are going to fall away on account of me. And then he says, you shouldn't have been surprised, for it is written. Or another way of saying it, the Bible says. Okay, I will strike the shepherd. This is God talking in the book of Zechariah. It is found in chapter 13, verse 7. It says, God the Father talking through the prophet of Zechariah. God is saying, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. Okay, so Jesus is interpreting this statement from God the Father as Jesus being the shepherd who is about to be struck. So Jesus is the one of whom God will strike. Okay, and that's what's going to happen. Okay, and it's interesting because who killed Jesus? Roman soldiers. But yet God ordained it. See, it's this fun little battle like 2 pedals on a bike of God's will and God's control and humans' free will. Both are happening at the same time. Very fascinating. God knew it took the death of his son for the salvation of sins that had to happen. And nobody can kill God. So God has to relinquish that over and give himself up and die. And yet the people are responsible for what they did. So it's an interesting battle that goes on there. And so Jesus is saying he's the shepherd, that he's going to die, and that the sheep, his disciples, will scatter. But, Jesus says, and but's a good word, but after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee. Okay, so that's Jesus' prediction of both his death, the disciples scattering, and his resurrection. So he's setting the stage for the disciples. But the disciples are not quite so amused. They're not quite so convinced either. So check out verse 33. Peter replied, hey, Jesus! Okay, those words I added. But Peter replied, even if all fall away on account of you, I won't. I never will. Take it to the bank. Okay, that's Peter's statement. In other words, Jesus, you're wrong. Notice that. Has Jesus ever been wrong before? Has Jesus made a mistake yet? Has Jesus been inaccurate at any point? No. So the guts, the Hebrews would say he has chutzpah. Okay, he's got some major guts here to say, Jesus, I disagree with you. And moreover, who was it that was speaking in the Old Testament in the book of Zechariah? God the Father. So Peter's saying, who else is wrong? God the Father. Unless Peter's not a sheep and he's one of the under-shepherds. Big position and promotion for Peter. He's not there yet. He becomes an under-shepherd later, but right now, still a sheep. Okay? It's almost as if the wool has been pulled over his eyes. It will be later he will find out that he was feeling sheepish and was a bad disciple. Oh, come on. That's good stuff. So he's like, all will fall away except me. I never will. Jesus replies, truly, I tell you. Looks at Peter. Truly, I tell you. This should have gotten Peter's attention. Because Jesus didn't say, well, maybe. Jesus said, truly. Like, oh yeah? Really? I'm God. Let's have a conversation. That's Jesus' start here. Truly I tell you, this night, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. Everyone else is going to disown me once, but you cocky one. See, rooster joke. I knew that one would just fly right by you. I just knew it. so you, oh cocky one, you're going to disown me 3 times. You're going to be the worst at it from everybody else here, is kind of Jesus' statement. But Peter declared, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. Peter says again, And the other disciples said the same. It was like a big old, episode of ER. Okay, or House, or The Resident, or whatever, where you got a bunch of doctors saying, here's what's going to happen. Do you concur? And everyone's like, I concur. So Peter's like, I'm not going to do it. Jesus is like, Peter goes, Jesus is like, And everyone else is like, we concur. That's what's going on in this situation. And Jesus is kind of stressing out a little bit about this, because how many of you have ever been stressed out when you tell someone a fact, and they go, like, this is fact. Like I tell my son George, hey, it's raining outside. He goes, Dude, look out the window. He opens it up, just pouring. See, it's raining. It's sunny. I'm like, fine, dude, go outside, see if you come in dry. Like, come on. This is a fact. It's not an opinion here. It is a fact. So Jesus is saying, fact, you're going to betray. Fact, you're going to scatter. Absolute 100% fact. And the disciples are like, no, that's just your opinion. And now as they're walking, I imagine they're constantly going, like I'm so devoted to Jesus, like I'm hashtagging super devoted. I'm like so devoted. In fact, my devotion is like so solid, there's like no softness in it at all. It's like so unsoft that like my devotion is like the softness is like micro. I'm Microsoft devoted. And by the way, that's where Microsoft name came from. Bill Gates' Microsoft devotion with his business partners. Kid you not, that's what it means. And so the disciples were like we're Microsoft. That's how devoted we are. We have like no softness. We're like totally there. So finally Jesus is like, you know what? Guys, shush, I'm going to go pray. You all stay here. And some people wonder why he made some of them stay there. And he went on ahead to pray. I think because he was tired of their belly aching. He was tired of their arguing and nitpicking and going, He's like, just shut up. Stay here, pray. I'm going to go over there, away from you. How many parents felt that way at the zoo with their kids? They're just like, you know what? Fine. Here's a quarter. Ride the elephant. Mommy's going over here. That's what's happening. Okay. And so it's just so Jesus now is like just So he gets, because what's coming up? His crucifixion, his betrayal, that's what's happening. Okay, Jesus is about to be falsely arrested, falsely accused, beaten, tortured, falsely tried, and then killed as an innocent victim of the whole situation. He is going to die by a torturous means of being whipped, punched, pierced, beard ripped from his face, flogged where skin is ripped out from his back. He's going to have nails through his wrists and feet. He is going to undergo torture. He is stressing out, and now his disciples are disagreeing with him when he's God. Okay, even his own family, if you will, his spiritual family is just totally letting him down. So Jesus is getting completely stressed out. In fact, check this out, verse 36. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane and said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. Hopefully now that statement means more than maybe it ever had when you think about the context here. Sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took Peter and two of the sons of Zebedee along with him. These, by the way, James and John are the sons of Zebedee. These three are his inner circle. They're the ones he's training for leadership. They're the ones that he is mentoring. Peter ends up becoming the top leader, the pastor, head pastor of the mother church of all the churches in Jerusalem, the first church. Peter ends up being that pastor. And then later, Jesus' brother becomes that pastor, much down the road, whose name is also James, not the same James that's the son of Zebedee. Yeah, I know, it gets confusing. Okay, so there's lots of James. But so Jesus takes the three inner core, he brings them with them, okay? And he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Okay, he became filled with sorrow and very distressed, very disturbed within him. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed. In other words, I can't take this. My rubber band has stretched to the point of breaking, and it can't be stretched anymore, and the event hasn't even come yet. I can't handle this anymore. This is beyond me. I am overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Like I could actually die before the crucifixion. Like I am just to the point that I don't know if I go to sleep, if I'm even going to wake up. I am at that point. I am just lost beside myself. I have absolutely nothing to help me at this point. I am wounded. I am overwhelmed. I am heartbroken. I am scared. I have everything happening to me all at once. So stay here. Keep watch with me. I need you. Be there for me. Have my back. Be here for me. Jesus is absolutely, can you sense it? Stressed out. Maybe you've been there too. Not in the same way, but in similar ways of equal depth and equal heartache and equal frustrations. You've been there. You know what he's going through. Maybe you're feeling it. Maybe even right now your heart rate is starting to increase. Maybe you get a little bit of just, inside of you. You're almost as if the emotions are coming back. Just the very thought and the statement of some of this is so familiar to you. It's like you're having a flashback. Or maybe something is upcoming here soon throughout this upcoming week, and you're already just coming as if it's happening right now, and you're just feeling it all over again. I can tell by how some are just shifting and moving that you're exactly where Jesus was. And this is the great thing to know, first off, is that we have a God who has been there in Jesus Christ. We have a God who's been there. And it's amazing that all the false religions of the world have gods who have no idea what they're talking about. They've always been in the distance, out there somewhere, out of our hair. They've always been this being that they believed in that just never was involved in human affairs. Here we have the real God of history, the real Jesus. He shows up, he's human, and he is struggling like we struggled. This is where Jesus is at. And this is what we can start assessing some basic causes of stress in our life. The first basic cause of stress predominantly is this, that you are thinking and feeling out of control of something that is important to you. It's the basic cause. That's number one. Okay? That you are feeling or thinking that you are out of control regarding something that is important to you. Okay, for Jesus, what's important to him? Life. Just the little things, right? Life is important. Not having pain. That's important. Most people don't search for pain. Most people don't go to the dentist's office and say, don't numb me up and drill extra slow. That's usually what people are like, yeah, exactly. That's not how we are. How many people get anxious just even thinking about making a dentist appointment? Because you know that something's going to hurt when they numb you up. Can't you just numb it up without the stupid needle? Come on. You know, we don't like it. People don't like surgery. People don't like multiple types of treatments, of medicinal treatments, because it involves pain or discomfort or side effects that we don't like. You know, and on it goes. And we just get nervous. We get scared. We get stressed out. Because something's important to us, and we don't have any control over it. And so there's that basic issue there. And I want you to notice something. Jesus is stressed, but it was not sin. I just want you to get there in your head. It is not sinful to be stressed. It is not sinful to have stress. In fact, you ready for this? Here's a perspective shift for you. If you don't have stress in your life is boring. Just putting that out there. Okay, it is absolutely boring. A professor of mine named Dr. Rayburn, he was one of my professors of psychology at seminary. He made the definition of stress as this. He defined stress as a challenge. And often we tend to think of stress only in those severe categories, but isn't sometimes just life stressful? Where you can't point to any one thing because it's a cascade of dominoes of many things that happen in life, whether it's dealing with work or something was late or traffic jam or whatever. You get an annoying customer, or you wake up and your spouse is grumpy, you don't know why you woke him or her up, and your kids are whiny, and your teachers are just cranky and they didn't have their coffee, and so they give you extra assignments, and on and on. Just things keep coming. And you're just like, and next thing you know, it just keeps piling up on you. Okay, and you're just out of control of it all, and you have something important to yourself called sanity. It's called time. I wish I had some again to myself, but I don't have it. Even when I go to the bathroom, there's my kids on the door. There's their fingers underneath. Just trying to say, Mommy, Daddy. That's when I wake up to at 5:30 in the morning. I go in the bathroom, and not about 20 seconds after I shut the door, there's my daughter. Daddy, do you want to go on iPads and play games? Daddy's busy right now. What you doing? Come on out. You've been in there for so long. I've been here for 20 seconds. Well, it feels like it's been forever. And now I'm like, now I don't have to go anymore. I'm totally distracted. It's over. And I'm stressed. Okay, that's what it is. You're just out of control of things. That's the basic cause of stress. And then people try to handle that stress in really ineffective ways. Some people, they turn to addictions. Okay, and they're just like, I need my coffee, I need my cigarettes, I just need whatever. And they just get all freaked out, right? Or maybe they respond with anger, right? And they just are like, I can't take this anymore. I said that frozen, spin the pinwheel of death, and they just freak out, And then in the end, many times, an adult will end up looking very much like this little girl, just freaking out, looking this. This is what stress does to an adult, right? This is how we respond to just the daily parts of life. And we just freak out because that's stress. It's what it does. But at least our life isn't boring. At least we got things to talk about when we get home. At least we got things to think about instead of going, butterflies on a hippo. At least we got things we can actually think about. Something constructive and productive, not just random chaos. But there's a secondary cause. The secondary cause is heavier. The secondary cause is harsher. The secondary cause is where it gets to the more severe elements. And it looks something like this. This is where you know that something's about to happen. It's inevitable. You cannot avoid it. It's going to happen. And you don't know how you're going to brace to endure it. That's the secondary cause of stress. It's where you have an impending doom. And it's certain. It's not like you're trying to foresee the future with some fake crystal ball. It's not like you're guessing or anticipating a potential outcome of something. It's where you know for fact something's coming. The date is on the calendar. There is no avoiding it. Those moments are where you might all of a sudden get a phone call, and it's a police officer saying, I want to talk to you about your kid. Or your spouse walks in saying, I've had an affair. I want a divorce. Doctor walks in, it's cancer. Whatever the case is, that impending doom has been laid before you. And there's no avoiding it. You can pretend all you want. Fact and reality are what they are. There is no safe zone for this. There is no way of distraction for this. It is reality. It is fact. It is coming. You can't sleep. Your mind is racing. Your heart is breaking. And you don't know where God is. This is where Jesus is at. There's an impending doom on the horizon, and he cannot escape it. People are coming within hours to arrest him, beat him, and kill him. It is coming. He can see it as clear as day. And he has verses, but he has no answers. Maybe you've been there where you search the Bible and you got verses you could quote. Verses about how great God is, verses about relying on him, but in the end you just don't feel like you got anything. You have no answers, because knowing he's good does not help you always at certain places to know how to handle something, because it's just too dark. The anxiety is so great, you just don't know how to do it. And someone could say, well, God's in control. That doesn't help. Yes, God's in control, but is Jesus still going to die? Is he still going to be tortured? Is it still going to hurt? Is it still going to be dark and bleak? Yes. You see, it doesn't give you an answer on how to handle it. That's where Jesus is at. This secondary cause. God's in control, but your spouse is still cheating on you. God's in control, and yet your father is still dying. God's in control, but your kids are still in jail. You see, relying on that to get you through is one thing, but it's still not the answer on how to handle this now. It doesn't help that in these dark situations. See, I told you the second part was heavier. And that's where Jesus is. Notice, who knows the Bible better than anyone? Jesus? Notice in this section, he doesn't really quote very many verses. Notice when he goes to the garden and prays, he doesn't quote verses. He doesn't even really pray a lot of verses because there just aren't verses for him. Because Jesus is at the point that he is overwhelmed. In other words, he does not know how to handle what's coming. And so Jesus goes to pray. That's his first response. Actually, his first response is telling his friends that he's struggling. And let me just give you a little side note here. It's not part of my notes, but I think it's important. So, side note. If you're hurting with something, don't isolate yourself. If you're struggling with something, don't keep it to yourself. What tends to happen is, A, you struggle with it alone, and then B, you really don't change on how you handle it because you're just going to handle it the way you always have, which in the past has probably not been the right way of dealing with it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be isolating yourself now. And then also, if you're going to just isolate yourself like that, what tends to happen is comes anger that nobody was there for you. And it's like, what are we mind readers? I remember there was a guy in the church I was at up in Michigan. He was all mad at me. And he was sitting there in church, just sitting there all grumpy. And I just saw that he was angry. And I didn't know it was at me at first. I walked up to him like, dude, man, what's going on? You got a heavy aura about you. You just look really ticked. And he's like, I just came here to let you know you're never seeing me again. I'm like, dude, what's going on? It's just like, 10 minutes before church starts, which is just the way you want to start worshiping God, right? Like, yeah, thanks for bringing that now. And he's like, you weren't at my father's funeral yesterday. It's like, your dad died? He goes, yeah, on Thursday. Why didn't you tell me? I put it in the paper. There's a paper? Why didn't you call someone? Why didn't you tell someone? He's like, yeah, no one from the church showed up. None of us even knew. Still, you should have figured it out. And he got up and he left. See, that's what happens when you isolate yourself. Gotta let people know. Well, in my generation, we just always been picking ourselves up by our bootstraps. That's just kind of what we do. Yeah, except those bootstraps are broken. And there's a hole in the boot and your foot's going through. It's like a lot of good that does. You pull it up far enough, it looks like granny panties. I mean, what good is that? You got to tell people. You got to tell someone. You're hurting. You're struggling. Help. Be here with me. Pray with me. Send somebody if you can't be here. Just somebody. Come. Pray with me. Be with me. Help me through this. That's what Jesus does. Jesus brings people with him that are, in a sense, failures and don't even get all of it. They're not perfect people. It's not like they're the most spiritual bunch in the world. And Jesus brings them. And then he prays. Check out Jesus' prayer. His prayer is like a reflection. It is how to pray the way he taught it back in Matthew 6. This is the Lord's Prayer in action. Check this out. So, starting at verse 39, going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed. Notice this. His posture is not important, but this is not a posture of somebody who's in a good place. Have you ever been so emotionally moved you couldn't even stand? So he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me." In other words, God, deliver me, rescue me, save me. I don't want to go through this. Heal me, free me, something. Take this cup and take it away. That's his prayer. And then he says, "Yet, not as I will, but as you will." Not as I will, but as you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. Because, why Peter? Because he was the one that was the most vocal, right? "Couldn't you stay awake for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. Your spirit is willing," because Peter said, "I'll die for you. I'm there for you. I got your back." So Peter's spirit is willing, but it's the rest of him. His mind, his heart, the rest of him is weak. He's weak. His flesh is weak. So he went away. Jesus went away a second time and prayed. But notice, the prayer has changed. Jesus prays differently. "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away, unless I drink it, may your will be done." See, there's two ways to get through an obstacle, get away from an obstacle or a problem. There's two ways. If I have a cup here, which I got, and I were to say, "Hey, someone, remove this cup for me." Somebody, come on, it's filled with, there's water in this. I don't want to spill it everywhere. Somebody just take the cup away, okay? And if nobody did, there's one other way I could get rid of this cup with the water in it without making a mess. That's how. That's another way. Some people say, "God, heal me so I don't need this doctor appointment." You want to know another way to get rid of that doctor appointment? You go to it. The next day, it's gone. Right? It's called drinking your cup. People say, "I don't know if I can go through this funeral. I wish it could just go away." Want to know how you can get it to go away? You go to it. Next day. It's gone. It's called drinking the cup. That's where Jesus is at. "Lord, you know what? I wish you could just deliver me and let's go to plan B, but if the only way to get through this is me drinking the cup, if that's how that cup's going to get removed, then fine, I'll drink it. Let's do this." When he came back, he again found them sleeping. Man. Typical male, right? Just can't keep their eyes open when you need them. Well, watching the ladies do this, that's been interesting. Wake up! Pastor's talking about you. When he came back, he found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing as prayer number 2. "Okay, God, I'll drink this. If that's your will, I'm drinking it." Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting?" I mean, if you're watching a Colts game, that makes sense, but you're not. Come on. Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer. We'll see the rest of that story next week. But that's how he's saying, get up. Do you see it? It's dark. It's dim. You see that light shining off the horizon? Those are torches. You hear that sound in the ground? That's feet. They're marching. Can you hear their chant in the air? They're coming. They're being led by Judas. They're on their way. It's happening now. Wake up. Be here for me. And that's where our text for today ends. But I want you to notice, isn't it weird that Jesus goes back to the disciples 3 times? Isn't it weird that he prays the same type of prayer 3 times? That it would record it for us with that type of detail. Isn't that weird? I've always been one that says that if the Bible writes it, it's important. If the Bible repeats it, it's super important. If the Bible repeats it 3 times, you really might want to pay attention. Because repetition means that the level of importance is significantly high. And I want to point out just 2 things on this, and then we'll be done. It's going to be real simple. Enjoy. Number 1, Jesus' strength versus our weakness is point number 1. Jesus has strength, and we have weakness. We just need to point that straight out. And even Jesus' weakest is stronger than our greatest strength. We just need to admit that and recognize that. And here's the thing. We all have weakness in that, have you ever fallen asleep while praying? Have you ever laid down at bed at night and said, "Dear Heavenly Father," and next thing you know, the alarm clock's going off and it's morning? And you just wonder if God's been sitting there like on the cell phone going, "Hello? Is this thing on? Hello? Can you hear me now?" you know, how many of you have ever had it that maybe we're in church and then maybe you're at a meeting and then you hear that someone's going to pray and you just go, "Oh, please let it be you'd say your own prayer. "Please, God, let it be someone who prays short. Don't call on so-and-so. Please don't call on brother so-and-so." I was that way. I'd be at this church up in Michigan back before I was a pastor, and I'm like, "Oh, please don't call on Mr. Scott. Oh, if you call on him, oh, please, God, we'll be here for 5 more minutes. And I'm hungry. My tummy's eating itself." And then I hear, "Brother Scott, would you lead us?" I go, "No, God, are you hearing me? Oh, why am I being persecuted?" Maybe you've been there. That we just sometimes struggle. Have you ever had it that you're trying to read the Bible, but you find out that you're halfway through the page just to have been daydreaming and have no idea what you read? Have you been there? Have you ever been there where the pastor's preaching something and you're sure it's pretty good because he's doing this and going like this and there's something on the screen, but you're like, Yeah, you're there now, aren't you? I can see that dear look because, they're the ones not laughing at that. Why is everyone laughing? See, we're weak. We're weak. We're selfish. We are weak in our sacrifice, weak in our commitments, weak in our zeal. We're weak. We struggle with that. We absolutely struggle with that. We struggle with that with our relationship with God. We struggle with that with our relationship with other people. We forget dates. We forget important things happening in other people's lives. We forget our spouse's birthdays, anniversaries. We can forget that they're struggling with something. We can forget that we probably should have bought them a present just because we love them. There's so many things we can just forget because we are just so struggling with so much and we're just simply weak. That's who we are. We are absolutely people who are weak. But let's take it a step further. I don't want to stay there. Let's take it a step deeper. I mean, we're gathered together. We're ready for something fun, right? Take this a step further. Not just were the disciples sleeping while Jesus was praying. It's interesting that they were supposed to have his back, and they didn't. They failed him. Who are you failing right now in your life? Who are the people in your life? Maybe you said you'd pray for them, but you didn't. Maybe you said you'd be there for them, but you weren't. Maybe you said you would be committed. Maybe you said many things, but have failed. You've let them down. You have forgotten. And then you maybe even tried to blame the other person as if it's their fault. You forgot. Why didn't you remind me? If you would have just reminded me, I would have been. Let me ask, would that have worked with the disciples? If Jesus said, "Wake up, why are you sleeping?" They're like, "Well, Jesus, why didn't you wake us up?" That's what I just did. Duh. You shouldn't have fallen asleep in the first place. How dare we try to accuse other people for our own failures? But we do that. Who have you failed? How many of your kids have you just let down? Or your parents, or your neighbors, or a loved one, or a sibling, or whomever, that you just let them down because you weren't there for them like you said you would be. You didn't comfort them. You didn't have their back. You didn't support them, and you didn't encourage them. And then sometimes you might say, I got horrible Christian friends. I got horrible Christian friends. They won't pray with me. They weren't there for me. They weren't there. And we just point it all out about everybody else's failures. Here's the thing. If you have Christian friends that fail you, you do not have horrible Christian friends. You have Christian friends. Because we are all going to fail at some point. We are all going to forget at some point. We are all going to let each other down at some point because we are not perfect. We are sinners. Just because we have Christ in our life doesn't make us perfect. We are still going to screw up. We're still going to mess up. We're still going to have moments of selfishness. We're still going to have stress that's going to focus us in such a way that we're going to think about with such precision that we're going to neglect other areas, sinfully so, but we're going to neglect other areas. And that's where we're going to be. So you do not have horrible Christian friends. You have Christian friends. At least be glad you got people that were willing to say they'd pray with you in the first place. Even if they didn't, at least you got someone you can talk to. You aren't isolated and fully alone like you sometimes think you are at. But here's the other thing I want us to look at. This is the final of the 2 points. Proper praying and perspective. Proper praying. This is praying with a submissive spirit. This is praying with a submissive spirit. And I don't know if you're familiar with how submission works. I know people love to complain about it, especially women, because of certain passages in the Bible. Let me just kind of share with you how submission works. To submit means you do not agree, but you're willing to go along with it anyway. That's what to submit means. If I were to go to my family and I were to say, hey, what are we going to have for lunch? And my wife were to say, we're going to have pizza. And I go, man, I had pizza yesterday. Can we have something else? You know, we're having pizza. Fine. Then I'm submitting. But if she says, I go, what are we having for supper? She goes, we're having pizza. And I go, yes! Awesome! Let's have pizza. Am I submitting? Nope. I'm agreeing. There's a difference. Jesus did not want to die. Jesus did not want to go that route. He did not agree. He wanted plan B. He submitted. He submitted. How's your prayer life? Do you submit to God's will? In the year 1789, there was a woman who was born that struggled like this a little bit. She had weird health issues. By the time she was the age of 30, she was a complete invalid. She was just bedridden, couldn't get out of bed at all. Constantly, her muscles were weak. She was exhausted. She made messes. She had no muscle control of anything. It was a mess. People had to change the bed sheets out from under her. She couldn't walk, couldn't move. And in the 1700s, it's not like you had wheelchairs or motorized amigos, you know? And so there she was. And she would call out to God. And she would say, God, why am I here? Why am I even alive? What good am I? I can't meet anyone like anyone's really going to marry this. I can't worship. I can't do anything. I can't go anywhere. I can't help anyone. Why am I even alive? She battled with depression. She battled with suicidal thoughts. She battled with everything you could ever imagine. The stress in her life was absolutely extreme. And everyone thought because her health failed so fast that she would only live for a couple years. She stayed in that bed 52 years before she died at the age of 82. Her name was Charlotte Elliott. Maybe you don't know that name. She wrote some songs. One of the songs went like this: just as I am, though tossed about, with many a conflict, many a doubt, fighting and fears within and without, O Lamb of God, I come. I come. See, she wrote over 150 hymns. It's considered one of the best hymn writers in the history of humanity. Because even though she could not get out of bed, even even though her body was failing her and she felt like she had no purpose, she knew she could at least take up her cross and follow God. And that meant taking up all the burden, all the pain, all the sorrow, all the heartache, and say, God, I'm going to worship you with whatever I have left. And she wrote and she wrote until God stayed her hand at the age of 82. What are you going to do with your stress? Are you going to lash out and just stay in that darkness of depression and anxiety and worry and filth? Or are you going to say, I'm going to take it all. I'm going to bundle it up. And I'm going to find out how to worship God with this. I'm going to find out how to push through. Even though it might be dark and I can't escape it, even though it's over me like a dark horizon and there's no way of getting around it, I'm going to raise up my hands with whatever strength I have, and I'm going to praise. Let's all stand together and praise today. Wherever you're at, wherever your heart is, whatever brokenness you're at, there might not be an answer for what you're at other than drink the cup and praise the Lord. Let's all praise the Lord together.